The hallway was a war zone. The bell had just rung for lunch, but instead of a flood of cheerful chatter, the air was thick with tension. Students stood frozen along the walls, eyes darting nervously toward the commotion near the sophomore lockers. That's where 3 members of the high school football team, guys twice the size of most kids, were cornering a girl who had only been at Lincoln High for a month. Her name was Sophie Harris, a quiet 16-year-old who kept her head down, walked fast between classes, and ate lunch in the farthest corner of the cafeteria. But today, she didn't get to just walk past trouble. Trouble had walked right into her path. "Hey, new girl," sneered Mark Trent, the team's star quarterback. He slammed his palm against the locker beside her head with a loud clang. "We hear you think you're too good to talk to us." Sophie's pulse quickened. The other 2, Ben and Connor, flanked her, cutting off any escape. It was the kind of moment most kids in her position would freeze in. And maybe, a month ago, Sophie would have. But the girl they thought they were intimidating had a history they didn't know about, and a reason she wasn't going to just take it. She'd moved here from Chicago after her dad passed away in an accident. She'd already had to deal with losing her home, her friends, and the father who had been her anchor. Back in Chicago, she joined a self-defense club at 14 not because she wanted to fight, but because she'd needed a way to fight off the anxiety and fear that had gripped her after losing him. Her dad had always said, "You can't control the storm, but you can learn to swim in the waves." Right now, she was standing in the middle of a storm. Ben leaned in, smirking. "Let's see how tough you are without your little notebook and books. Maybe you'll give us your number." The shove came fast. Mark pushed her shoulder into the lockers, the cold metal pressing against her back. Whispers rippled through the watching crowd. Some were waiting for her to cry, some for her to run, and others were silently hoping she wouldn't. Sophie looked straight at Mark. "Move." He laughed. "Or what?" And that's when it happened. The second he shifted his stance and leaned in, Sophie ducked slightly, brought her knee up in one swift motion, and connected hard, very hard, with his thigh, just above the knee. The sound that escaped him was part growl, part gasp. His face twisted in pain as he stumbled back, grabbing his leg. He wheezed, but couldn't finish the sentence. That hit wasn't just painful, it was the kind of injury that could end a sports season. The hallway exploded in shocked murmurs. Ben and Connor backed off instantly, suddenly unsure about ganging up on someone who could drop their quarterback in 2 seconds flat. "You're crazy." Ben spat, but even as he said it, he took a step away. "No," Sophie said quietly, brushing her hair out of her face. "I'm done letting people think they can push me around." The rest of that day felt like a shift in the school's atmosphere. Rumors spread faster than wildfire, some exaggerated, some twisted, but one truth remained: no one was going to mess with Sophie Harris again. That night, though, Sophie sat on her bed replaying the scene. She didn't feel like a hero. She didn't want to be known for hurting someone. But she also knew this: there's a difference between starting a fight and ending one before it gets worse. Still, trouble wasn't over. The next morning, the school's vice principal called her into the office. Mark's injury meant he'd be benched for the rest of the football season, and his parents were furious. There was talk of suspension, and for a moment Sophie thought her life in this new school was about to crumble before it had even begun. But then something unexpected happened. Several students who'd been in the hallway came forward to give their statements, telling the vice principal exactly what had happened, and how Sophie had only acted in self-defense. One of them was Lily, a girl Sophie had never even spoken to before. "People need to know," Lily told her later, "that standing up for yourself doesn't make you the bad guy. You didn't just stand up for you, you stood up for all of us who've been pushed around." The days turned into weeks. The football guys kept their distance. Sophie found herself sitting at lunch with Lily and a small group of friends, slowly building a life she didn't think she'd find here. And while she didn't want the reputation of the girl who took down a quarterback, she was quietly proud that she hadn't let fear make her small. One Friday afternoon, as she walked past the gym, she saw the football coach watching his team train without Mark. Their eyes met for a second, and he gave her the smallest nod. She wasn't sure if it was approval or just acknowledgement, but it felt like closure. The lesson Sophie carried forward, and the one I want you to take away, is this. You don't need to go looking for fights. You don't need to be loud or aggressive to be strong. But when the moment comes where you must stand up for yourself, your voice, or your space, you are allowed to. And you might be stronger than you think. Friends, if you've ever been in a moment where someone tried to make you feel powerless, I want you to share your story in the comments below. I read them all, and together, we can make this space a community of support. And if you believe in kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right, make sure you subscribe to Be Kind Always so we can keep sharing stories that remind us we are never truly alone in our struggles. Because kindness isn't weakness, and courage doesn't always look like what you expect.